Joining us at the table are our economic experts, CNN business editor at large, Richard Quest, also with us, CNN global and economic analyst, Rana Foroohar, also with us. Marc LoPresti, a market strategist, and Donald Trump is moderating, I think, a debate within his allies and among people in the White House even. Is this a negotiating tactic, or is this just a thing that we're doing now? Because the United States of America, we like tariffs now. We didn't for 100 years, but we do now. So in a Truth Social, he says big businesses are not worried about tariffs because they know they are here to stay. So are we negotiating, or are we just a tariff country now?
Donald Trump's always negotiating, Abby. I mean, let's understand. This is his approach. He's been a deal maker his entire life. It makes for great sound bites to say, this isn't a negotiation. This is what it's going to be. It's tariffs, baby, tariffs. But of course it's a negotiation, and we've already seen elements of behind-the-scenes talks, even with China, that are going on, notwithstanding his time on the golf course. And I'd like to say on the record, I have not been on the golf course myself since last August.
Too busy, too busy.
I'm too busy, not in the White House, but too busy.
Rana, do you buy that?
I think it's always a negotiation. I agree with that. And you have, it's interesting, you saw, certain retail stocks going up just a little bit today on the news that, oh, you're going to pull back tariffs on Vietnam, or, oh, there's a behind-the-scenes negotiation with Japan. But I think there's something more fundamental happening. And I believe Donald Trump has bungled what could have been a reset of the global trading system if we had done it with our allies and really gone after China, gone after the low-hanging fruit, had a plan and communicated it. No, instead, we're bringing down the U.S. economy and the global markets, and we are undermining trust. Which of our trading partners, even if he pulls back from tariffs, is going to believe anything he says tomorrow, next week, next month? I think it's going to take a long time to claw back the value that has been destroyed in the last couple of days.
There is a new sadness, in a sense, a sort of upset by many of us who cover this, because there's a realization as the week has gone on that this is totally and absolutely unnecessary. This vandalism, as I called it, this destruction of wealth, was completely unneeded. And it was done with just wanton disregard. You do not have 2 consecutive days of market falls of 6% into bear market territory on the whim of a policy. Now, put this in perspective. The last time we had 2 days of 6% falls was the pandemic. Strip out the pandemic as being sui generis, and you're back to 2008. Strip out 2008, and you're almost back to 1987, when I started covering all this stuff. There was no need for this. This is the point. This is why so many of us are upset about this. There was no need for this to be done in this way. There was a proper way to do tariff or to do trade reform, but bullying, haranguing, and then literally hitting them over the head was not the way to do it.
I've been listening to what they've been saying because I really want to understand this, and I'm going to take the other position. I think that Donald Trump and Scott Bessent and all of them, they mean it. They mean it because they want to raise a lot of money. And here is what Scott Bessent said to Tucker Carlson in an interview that was released today about just how much money they need to raise through these tariffs.
Do you have any sense of how much the U.S. government anticipates bringing in from the tariffs announced yesterday?
It's going to be a moving target. For sure. But could it be anywhere from $300 billion to $600 billion a year? Sure.
Okay, so that's meaningful revenue.
Very meaningful. But what will happen with tariffs over time, the ultimate goal of the tariffs, and the president says it all the time, bring your factory here. That's the best solution toward getting away from a tariff wall.
So, okay, give your reaction.
300, maybe, but that assumes that the rest of the world is just going to stay stationary and not cut deals with each other. If I were China, I would be in Brussels right now saying to Europe, you know what, let's go. Let's figure this out together. And who is going to trust as an investment coming to the U.S. with a president that's acting like this? I have actually been for tariffs and reindustrialization in very targeted ways for a long time. I think it's important to have more manufacturing in the States. I think it's important to build chips and ships and all of those things. But you've got to have both the tariff tool used very precisely and a real industrial policy at home and stability. We don't have stability. Business hates that. Business hates that.
The other part of what he said was that, oh, bring your factories here, and then we'll have some workers, but then we'll also have robots and AI. Workers are not going to be ultimately the beneficiary of any of this, and I think they are acknowledging that.
That's right.
Yeah, I'm the average American right here at this table because you guys are talking and I don't really understand what it is that you guys are saying. Like, seriously, I don't get it. The only thing that a lot of people who have families, who carpool, who go to and from the work, who live in the suburbs, who live in the cities, they're just wondering when things are going to get bad. That's what they're wondering. And all of the macroeconomic talk is going over their head. And honestly, I feel for them. I feel for them because it doesn't seem like anyone is talking directly to them. They're talking to the markets, they're talking to each other, they're talking to the financial system, but no one's telling somebody, hey, at the end of this summer, when you need to buy school supplies for your kids to go back to school when it's backpack time, like that money will be there and those prices will be stable. No one is talking to them. And I think that's the biggest tragedy in all of this.
The truth to be told to them, most people don't want to say. Because we had it today from Jerome Powell, chair of the Fed. He said there will be higher inflation, there will be slower growth. So the real sadness tonight is the people at home who are looking to retire.
Absolutely.
In the next year or two, and have suddenly seen their retirement funds go down by 20, 30, 40%. Because they wanted to take advantage of the Magnificent Seven and all of those sort of things. Tonight they're wondering, how the heck do I actually do it? This is real life economics, to your point. And you're right. The sort of nonsense that we can all go on about.
Oh, it's not nonsense.
Well,
I'm just saying.
But it's totally true because you're making a really important point. There is not some kind of 360 plan that has been articulated to America here. You know, Trump said, well, we're going to have to take a little pain. What does that mean? Who's taking the pain? The average working person will be taking the pain because when inflation hits, those are the people that spend 60% of their take home in energy and food, fueling their cars. I mean, we're going to be in a very, very difficult situation.
I find it insane that we're all finally concerned about inflation. That was a word that really didn't exist for many years while Joe Biden was president. But I want to point out something. Last night, Richard, you took off your shoe. You said it's made in Vietnam. It's going to be 34% more expensive next year. Today, the Secretary General of Vietnam reached out to President Trump and said, we want to have zero tariffs for both countries, proving to some degree that this is a leverage play.
What does that prove, Joe?
It proves.
What does that prove? Because at the end of the conversation, the president said, nice talking to you. And nothing about, oh, we're going to have a deal, lower our tariffs.
I'm going to tell you what it proves.
He said, great conversation.
Let's look historically. 1996, there was a member of Congress who stood on the floor looking at 2% tariffs we had on China, 35% tariffs they had on us. This woman demanded that we had reciprocal tariffs. You know who that was? Nancy Pelosi. 2008, same thing. A guy stood on the Senate floor lamenting.
Reciprocal tariffs.
I'm just saying, they lamented the loss of America's workers.
Lowered its tariff barrier to 0. You know what we did? We raised our tariff barrier to 17%.
Again, just going back. Democrats have repeatedly said, I have a list of quotes here, repeatedly said we should have reciprocal tariffs on different countries and did nothing. They're a party of Cory Bookers. Let's just talk and not do anything.
You talk about the Vietnam. I'm so glad you brought up Vietnam.
I tipped you off.
And I'll also bring up Cambodia. The problem with going to zero tariffs with Vietnam and Cambodia, great. First of all, U.S. exports almost next to nothing to those countries. It's negligible. It's less than 500 million. But let's assume you go to 0. The problem with both of those countries is not the nominal tariff rate of 30%, 15%. It's the non-tariff barriers, the government procurement rules, the ownership rules, everything else that Donald Trump quite rightly said on Wednesday, quite rightly said.
You took your shoe off. You said it's going to be 34% more expensive because of the tariff. Today, the Secretary General, forgive me, I forget the party name, the president's called Donald Trump and said, we want to actually negotiate.
But that's not going to help.
That would be favorable. That would be favorable. The problem is Democrats have been promising this. Bernie Sanders used to call free trade a right-wing conspiracy or something like that. never did anything about it. Never did anything about it.
Oh,
right?
I'm sorry.
And now,
I got to beg to differ
Please.
because here's the history. And I'm going to give both sides some credit. Trump won. Bob Lighthizer, the USTR, comes in and says, you know what, we got to rejigger the global trading system. It was a good thing to say. Tariffs on China, fine. Biden keeps those. Then he actually articulates a real industrial policy. He says, what do we need most of all in this country? Chips. We brought back the semiconductor industry in 18 months. That's how you do this. Trump now comes in, and he had, just to, let me finish, he had an opportunity here, actually, given the strength of the U.S. economy at this moment, to really work with allies and say, this is the time, Europe, Canada, Mexico, we're going to go to China and say, here's the new game, and here's how it's going to be played. He didn't do that. He is squandering our
Did I not see
I
Taiwan?
have to disagree with that slightly because that's not giving President Trump any credit for the amount of foreign investment that has been pledged in this very brief time of this administration. It's most estimates between $2 to $3 trillion commitments from SoftBank, from Taiwan Semi, to bring back. Well, Richard, you scoff. Why do you scoff?
I do, because
Please.
these
I
are
take issue with the scoff, sir.
I do. No, you can take as much issue as you like. But these are, of course, valid. If it happens,
They are. It's no less valid than the
Wisconsin.
CHIPS Act.
Wisconsin and the factory that was supposed to be built by, I can't remember the company, in 2018, never happened.
Yeah.
These are promises being made to appease a president to get him off your back. Let's see how much of that $2
Including
trillion.
some
I
promises
think they'll
that
be
were,
breaking ground in
including
Savannah
some
next week with,
promises
Hyundai
of
Motors on
some
a new $8 billion
plans that
plant.
were already in the works.
Is opening
Joe,
plant
just a
for
second.
BMW. Sorry.
Just a
So
second.
is the guy from Staten
Including
Island.
some promises that were made, that were planned when Joe Biden was president,
Yes.
and held off to
Yes.
announce after they waited to see who won the election. Businesses are not stupid. They do what they need to do to get in the good graces of Donald Trump. It's not rocket science. One last note, they were supposed to have a deal with China on TikTok, supposed to be announced this weekend. That is on hold now. And
Why do you think that is, though, Abby?
well, because China says, we want you to bring down your tariffs, and we're going to hold TikTok hostage until you do. And they're getting their way.
But that's to your
So,
initial point. It's part of the
I
negotiation.
don't think
It's
we are
how
on the
Donald
winning
Trump
side
plays
of
the
that
game.
negotiation.
But that remains to be seen.
I'll say
We're
something,
not on
though.
the winning
I'll
side
say
of that
something here.
negotiation. China has all the power.
If chaos is the only thing that you can count on, people will bet on chaos. And when you're betting on chaos, that keeps you tense. It keeps you
That's right.
tight.
That's
it
right.
doesn't, you don't move in good faith. You think, hey, this guy changes his mind every single minute, every single hour, and you start to kind
That
of
is
hold on to it.
100%
Right.
correct. Yeah.
All right, everybody, we got to leave it there for this conversation, but more ahead. Marc and Rana, thank you very much for joining us. Everyone else, stick around. Up next, Trump's favorite